Hi, this is Ken McCarthy, and you're probably getting this on November, let me look at my calendar, 11th, which is a Sunday morning. And it means that I'm at the Dan Kennedy Info Marketing Conference, and I'm probably giving my talk there, possibly right now as you're hearing this. And tomorrow, we're going to be starting the System Seminar Reunion. This is the first system event, live system event, that we've done in 7 years. Why? Because I pretty much taught you everything you needed to know, and I don't like to repeat myself. But some really new and important things have developed in the last couple of years, and I felt the urge, the need, the necessity to share them with my System Club members. If you don't know the System Club is what's been going on behind the scenes for the last 7 years. We stopped doing the public events, but I never stopped teaching. I still have a large following of people off radar. Every month we get together via telephone and I share the best stuff I've got. If you're interested in joining the System Club, you can find out about that by going to thesystemclub.com/test drive. But I want to, in preparation for these talks and this seminar and all this stuff, I've been generating mountains and mountains and mountains of material, and I'm kind of falling into despair because I realize I don't have time to share all the stuff that I want to share. Certainly not in the 1-hour talk I'm giving at Dan's event, and even over the 2 days that we're meeting in Chicago. So I'm just going to put some things on here that hopefully you can use and will benefit from. This is something that probably won't find its way into any of my talks, but I wanted to share it with you. And it is the mystery of Facebook. The mystery of Facebook. We accept Facebook as a reality, and it is a reality. And, it's probably one of the most, pound for pound, the most profitable company that exists, given how many employees it has and how much money it generates in terms of profit effectiveness, that not only exists, but that ever existed. It's completely taken over the entire world media space. It's kicked Google's ass in many ways. It's kind of an amazing phenomenon, and very few people give any thought to how it came to be or why it even exists in the first place. And these are the kinds of things I think about all the time, because I find that when you get the answers to basic fundamental questions like this, you get some insights that you can use for your own business and your own money-making activities. So we're going to go semi-deep dive into questions that nobody ever asks about Facebook. The first question is, why does Facebook work? Like all of human existence, thousands and thousands of years, there was never anything like Facebook. And suddenly this thing appeared 10 years ago, and it's taken over the world. How did that happen? Okay, here's why. Because this did exist 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. Facebook tapped into a deep underlying need, a need that is hardwired into the human being. And by tapping into that need and being there with the biggest and the best and the most, they took over the business of providing that need. What is that need? By the way, I'm going to go on a quick sidebar. It's really important. The reason I'm here, and the reason you're listening to me, and the reason your customers come to you and buy from you and stay with you is one thing and one thing only. It's not how charming we are. It's not how smart we are. None of those things. It's because you solve a problem for them. They may have a pain, and you help them get rid of the pain. They may have an aspiration, and you help them achieve that aspiration. That's a problem, right? If you want to do something and you can't do it, but somebody shows you how to do it, they've solved your problem. You may just want to be entertained, right? That's what television does, and the movies and nightclubs. People want to party, and they provide them a place to party. So that's also solving a problem. So the only way you ever make any money in this world is if you solve a problem. And if you're not making money, or not making as much money as you'd like, or your business isn't going the way you'd like, or you feel like you're off focus, step back and look at problems. that your prospects and customers are having? Are you solving them? Are you solving them well? Are you solving them as well as they can be solved? Are you solving them better than anybody else? Are you communicating that to people? If you're doing that, you'll do just fine. But if you're thinking about anything else, your image, your authority, I don't know, any one of the 10,000 things people think about, you're off track. It's all about solving problems. So that brings us back to this Facebook thing. What the heck problem did Facebook solve? Did people have a Facebook deficit that suddenly the company satisfied? Well, yes, they did. And it all goes back to the annual family Christmas card. The annual family Christmas card. I hope you've gotten one. You might have even produced one, but you've probably seen one. Some families like to get an annual photograph. Everybody dresses up in their Sunday best. Everybody puts a big smile on. Photographer takes the photograph, and that becomes the annual Christmas card. And that Christmas card goes out to all friends, family, and everybody else they can think of. That is the roots of Facebook. Now, what the hell am I talking about? Okay? Hardwired into the human being, hardwired even into animals in the wilderness, is a need to do personal PR. All right? We're all doing it. I mean, for example, we shave when we go out in the morning, right? Because we don't want to look like a hobo. That's personal PR. We take some care in the selection of our clothes because we want to look cool. That's personal PR. Everybody wants to look cool, even grandpa, right? So this personal PR thing is really, really, really strong. Why? Because it relates to survival. Right? Using personal appearance just as a example, but there's many variations of this. If you go out, your hair's uncombed, you haven't shaved, you're wearing baggy sweatpants and a dirty T-shirt, and you haven't taken, you know what? You're not going to win friends and influence people. And if you can't win friends and influence people, you're going to have trouble making money. And if you're having trouble making money, you're going to have trouble eating. And if you have trouble eating, you're going to have trouble surviving. So personal PR is a survival issue. You may not think about it that way all the time, but if you trace it back and think it through, it's hardwired. Even in the wild, if you spend a lot of time in the woods, and I have, you will see some wild things. I once saw a deer walking through the woods, and it got tangled up in a bush, and it was having trouble getting itself out. And it pulled itself out, and it kind of stumbled, and then it immediately started walking straight up again, like, oh, nothing happened. No, that didn't happen to me. No, I'm cool. Everything's cool. So animals have this personal PR drive. And it's one of the ways it was expressed in the pre-internet days was the family getting together and putting on their Sunday best and putting on their best face and taking the photograph and sending the photograph out on Christmas. Personal PR. So what, if you think about it, that's kind of a crazy thing too. Like, what does that do for you? Well, it activates and satisfies the drive for positive personal PR. So why wasn't there more of that kind of stuff? Well, there was. People would send wedding announcements to the newspaper. Hey, my daughter's getting married, or birth announcements. Hey, we just had a new baby. So this has always been going on. But what limited it were two things. Number one, good taste, because no one wants to see and hear about every bloody thing you do. Well, they don't really. Okay, so good taste sort of put a limit on that personal PR, but also just economics and technology. Like, there was no way to do personal PR every day, all day. There was no mechanism to do it. We were hardwired to do it. It's a survival drive. We want to put the best face on. We want to put out great PR about ourselves, but there was no easy mechanism. You could write a letter to the newspaper and have them put your wedding announcement in. You could, do your Christmas cards. You could brag around the water cooler, but you were limited by technology. And what Facebook did, and why Facebook thrives so insanely, and they really are thriving insanely, is they've given people a mechanism to scratch that genetic itch and put out personal PR 24/7, 365. And people want to do it. And people also kind of want to check out what other people are doing, So we're basically monkeys in the woods, We're sitting around, eating leaves and picking lice off each other and, just hanging out. And we talk about what we do and we listen to what somebody else does and we go back and forth, and that's pretty much what we do all day. We take time out to make money, we take time out to eat, but that's pretty much, we're social animals. And so Facebook plugged into this. It created a mechanism of expression, a vehicle of expression for this very deeply set need that was kind of limited in expression before the internet came along and before Facebook came along. So if you're wondering how did Facebook do what it did, that's how it did what it did. Let's go back to your business. What burning needs do people have? What itches do they have that they want to scratch? How is your business and your product helping them scratch those itches? Because you're not just selling a product, okay? Whatever your product is, doesn't matter. What you're really doing is rendering a service. Even if you're manufacturing widgets and you're a completely technical company, the service component is the most important part of your business. You've got to put those widgets in a box. That's a service. You don't just take the widgets and throw them in a pile and tell people sort them out yourself. Right? You create a catalog. You create an online ordering system. You create white papers on which widget to use when. You deliver the things on time. If there's a problem, you solve the problem. If people need a new kind of widget, you build a new kind of widget for them. All these, even though they're technical, physical things, it's all service. So you're in a service business. And the service business you're in is scratching the itch. So if you think you're selling X, Y, or Z, yes, that's the physical form, and that's what you explain to the banker when you go to get your credit card merchant account. And yeah, but what you really are doing is selling a service, and what you're really selling is the service of scratching the itch, the itches that people have, helping them plug into their most deeply seated needs, helping them express them, helping them satisfy them. And, earlier I said you're a problem solver. That's really what business you're in. The problem you're solving is how to make people feel happy, satisfied, and jazzed about life via your product. So this is, I don't know what business you're in, but I'm telling you, this applies to every single business that you could ever possibly be in or ever possibly dream of being in. And to the extent that you carve out some time periodically, hopefully every day, and think about this particular thing, your business is going to do a whole lot better. Now, I've got a bonus session here on Facebook. And this is one of the other great big lessons of Facebook that people have overlooked or never realized or never gave any thought about. We all know how big Facebook has become. Do you ever give a thought to how Facebook started and why Facebook even exists today? Right? It's like, you see a tree, great, but you have to realize at some point there was a seed. And without that seed, you would never have that tree. So if you're interested in trees, and everybody looks at the tree and goes, wow, that's a big tree, nobody ever thinks about, well, how did that tree start? How did that tree come to being? And if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner or someone that wants to go into business, that's a very fundamental question to address and think about and answer. And you really should look at that question for every business. How did this thing get started? Because that will give you some ideas and some inspiration and some insight into what you can and even should be doing with your business ventures. So how did Facebook start? Facebook started on a college campus, in a society, in a community, in a group of people that shared an affiliation. Okay, what was that affiliation? They were all at this one college. So everybody at that college shared that quality. One thing that you'll see if you ever go to one of these fancy colleges or visit one, or maybe you went to one, they have Facebooks, or they used to have Facebooks. And it literally was a Facebook. It was a little book. It's typically at private colleges, smallish colleges. Because if you have 20,000 people in your class, you're going to need a phone book. And so it didn't happen. So it tended to be smaller colleges, private colleges. And what was a Facebook? A Facebook was the name, the hometown, the high school, and the face of every one of the classmates in your class. The Facebook. It was a physical thing. And because it existed, we know this about everything that we see that exists and persists. We know one thing for sure. It satisfies a deep-seated need. So the Facebook satisfied a deep-seated need. That's why every year there'd be a new Facebook for the new class. And how was the Facebook used? Well, the intention was, get to know your fellow classmates. And the reality is people would go through the Facebook and kind of rank, hey, this girl's really hot. Which, by the way, was Zuckerberg's first product. It was a female classmate ranking online system. All right, expressing a need, expressing a behavior. It's what guys do. I'm sure girls do it too. So it has an official function and then it has an unofficial function. But basically, it was a reference. You could say, oh, he's from my hometown, or oh, wow, he's cool. He's from Arizona. I've always wanted to go to Arizona. Maybe I'll make friends with him, and I don't know. I'll learn about Arizona. Whatever. It was a way to keep track of your community. So what did they do? What did Zuckerberg do? He put it online. Very obvious no-brainer. He didn't invent the wheel. He didn't invent fire. He took something that already existed in the physical world that was proven over decades, and he simply electrified it. And once you put something on the internet, well, wow, now you can add more stuff to it, right? A Facebook, the limitation, I love physical media, but the limitation is once you print that book, it's done, right? Once you burn that CD, it's done. Once you burn that DVD, it's done. With the internet, the thing that makes the internet so interesting, and always has made it interesting, is you can adapt, change, and add and expand. So instead of the face and where you went to high school and where you grew up, everything about you. And people love to do, we already talked about that, they love to do PR. So, some people had to be prodded into doing it. Some people did it right away. And then you got this critical massive activity, and then it became a keeping up with the Joneses. Well, this guy's got, pictures of him scoring the winning touchdown. I'm going to put a picture of me scoring the winning goal in ice hockey, whatever, back and forth, an arms race, a PR arms race. So it worked. But now here's the key. He was not trying to take over the world as he's done. That was not in his mind at all. He was trying to serve a particular flesh and blood community that he was intimately familiar with. And this is another huge lesson in business. A lot of people think, oh, I wonder what a good business would be. And then they hear a tape or they go to a seminar and they go, oh, wow, that's a really good business. I'm going to go into that. You might make some money, but you're not going to thrive. Businesses flow out of intimate knowledge of a particular community. Now, I don't mean a physical community. It might be the community of everybody who loves knitting. It might be a community of everybody who loves collecting stamps. It might be a community of everybody who is interested in improving their health or in dealing with a particular ailment. All those are communities. And you cannot come into a community as a cold outsider knowing nothing about the community and really hope to make any decent money serving that community. Remember I said service? It's all the service business. And the service depends on your knowledge, right? You got to know what people want and serve them what they want. Not what you think they want, but what you know they want. So Facebook got its feet on the ground through intimate knowledge of a particular community, providing that community with an enhancement of something that community had already demonstrated that they wanted. Zuckerberg didn't invent anything. You don't have to invent anything. What you do have to do is sort of keep your eyes open and see what's going on and be embedded in, immersed in some kind of community. Now, nobody in the world would have ever guessed that you could have taken that thing and become the world's dominant media company, which is what they are. And when I say dominant, I mean they bloody the nose of the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post and CBS TV and every website out there, and even Google to an extent. They are dominant. And they grew out of what? Their feet on the ground were serving a particular community, providing a particular need. Now, the next step that Zuckerberg did was he said, well, gee, it works at my college campus. It works at Harvard. Why don't I do the rest of the Boston area? Okay, he wasn't setting out to take over the world. He was taking a logical, modest next step because colleges in the Boston area communicate, right? The guys go to the other campuses and try to pick up girls, and the girls go to parties at the other campuses and try to meet guys. That's how it goes. And Boston was this huge nexus of college campuses, still is. So that was step two. So he didn't, and here's a really important principle. He didn't overturn his boat reaching for something crazy. And that happens to a lot of business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs. You know, they add too many pieces, they go in too many different directions, and the boat tips over. What I recommend is add another oar, or add another guy with two oars. So now it's two of you rowing instead of you, or just paddling with one paddle. Keep the boat. Don't turn the boat over. Make the boat more effective and more efficient and let it cover more territory. And that's what they did. Then he went out to Silicon Valley, which made sense. This, if you're able to do that, if you're in a particular kind of industry, sometimes it makes sense to pick up and go to where that industry is happening. Part of the reason for my success in the internet world is I happened to be in San Francisco at a critical juncture. If I'd been in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or Miami, Florida, or Sioux City, Iowa, nothing would have happened. I could literally walk up the street and see people that were in my industry and make deals and do things with them. So he moved to Silicon Valley. Good move. But when he moved to Silicon Valley, what was his goal? World domination? No. I have video of this, by the way. I don't know if I can find it, I'll throw it up for you. But I have video of him sitting around talking about his grand plan. And you know what his grand plan was when he moved to Silicon Valley? Was to spread Facebook out among all the college campuses in America. That was the grand plan. Again, he didn't overturn his boat by reaching too far. He just added more people to row, so he was able to cover more ground. So the lesson is he started with intimate knowledge of a particular community. He served a community need. That need was not a mystery. You just had to open your eyes to see what it was. It already was being met through a physical medium. And so many fortunes have been made, by the way, by taking something from the physical world and expressing it on the internet. I mean, that's just been the most, and I talked about this back in '94. That has been the most reliable way to make money online, bar none. No invention, just simply enhancing a solution, enhancing a real world solution and putting it in digital form so that it could be bigger, better, and reach more people. So he started with a community. He grew organically from one campus to all the campuses in the Boston area, from all the campuses in the Boston area to all the campuses in the world. And, you know, I'm not going to say it was luck, because it wasn't. There's no, you know, when somebody works that hard, it's not luck, but he just happened to have the right thing at the right time with the right stuff. And by the way, there was another interview with him, and this one I won't be able to find. And this was kind of early-ish on. I mean, the company had hit. It was clearly important, but it hadn't really taken over the world the way it has now. And he said, because he was he was sort of focused on the beginnings at that time. Now he's focused on survival, which is one of the ironies of business, right? You hustle and you build this business, and it's exhilarating, and it's fun, and it's exciting. Then suddenly you've got this thing, and your first order of business is survival. You know, keeping it alive, because after a while you do hit the limits of growth, which Facebook is definitely hitting. And then what do? Well, you got to put in the moat, and you know, hire security, and I mean it's a whole another thing. But this was back when things were on the up, you know, just straight blue sky. And he said the thing that shocked me is that I kept expecting somebody to come along and compete with me, and there were people doing things similar to him, but nobody was putting their back into it, you know, and that just shocked and amazed him. And he kept waiting for it. He kept waiting for meaningful competition. And it never arrived. And he realized that the reason that he succeeded, and it is the reason he succeeded, is he just cared more. He and the team that he assembled around him to achieve this particular thing just cared more about making it happen. And so once they got, you know, they found themselves in Silicon Valley, they'd saturated the college market, and then suddenly it was, okay, well, what's next? And by great good fortune, he was inadvertently creating a whole generation of influencers. So, you know, you go to college, you're on Facebook, you graduate from college, now you're in the workplace, you're still using Facebook, right? And class after class would graduate. I mean, basically every college class would graduate as hardcore Facebook users, and these people were infiltrating the workplace and society. And that isn't, it's not working that way anymore, but that's the way it worked in the original years. And so you'd get mom on it, you'd get grandpa on it, you'd get your brothers and sisters, your nephews, your friends, and everybody would be on this thing. So we just talked about Facebook. Maybe you learned some things about Facebook that you'd never really thought about before. And most importantly, you learned some things that you can apply to your own business. And this is the kind of stuff we do at the System Club every month. We think. We look for patterns. We look for principles that we can apply to our own business. And thinking, you know, takes time. And it takes big blocks of time. And it's not always possible when you're running a business. Sometimes you're just running so fast and so hard, you don't have time to step back and think. So one of the functions of the System Club, one of the needs it provides, one of the problems it solves, is it's that step back and think time. And it happens every month. And if you've been in business for a while, you know that the step back and think time is the most profitable time that you ever spend. I'm in my home office right now. I used to have a full-time assistant, and I remember one day I had this idea, and I was so glad she was there. I said, "Make a web page about this, would you?" And I sort of sketched it on the back of a piece of paper. I wanted to put a button here, put a screen there, and she did it. I had a little thinking time. I had a little breathing time. That business has netted me over $1 million in the last, let's see, we started it in 2000 and, I'm going to say 7. So it's not like it made me $1 million in a day or a month or a year, but it's just steadily, and that's profit, by the way. It's just steadily grinded out money. And it all came from a little bit of thinking, a little bit of space, where I had some time to just think. And, what if I hadn't had that time? What if I hadn't, and it's not that you don't have the time, what if I hadn't taken the time? And I think about that every day, because that extra $1 million really came in handy. What if I hadn't taken the time? So the System Club is once a month taking the time to just sit back, get away from the grind, get away from the ringing phone, get away from the emails, and just think about what we're doing. And one of the ways that we help ourselves think about what we're doing is I bring in experts. I'm not bringing in people to pitch the latest shiny new object. We don't do that. I'm not even bringing in internet marketers. Sometimes I do, but very often I'm bringing in marketers who are marketing in all kinds of different ways. Sometimes I'm bringing in people that are just business owners. Sometimes I'm bringing in people that just have interesting things to say. For instance, anybody ever heard the 80-20 rule and Richard Koch, who wrote that book? I brought him in on the System Club, I don't know, it was like 10, 12 years ago, 14 years ago. I don't know how long. It's a long time ago. Well, that idea, which Perry Marshall was exposed to by the System Club, became the core of his business. Take away the 80-20 rule from Perry Marshall and you don't have a whole lot. No offense. Same thing with me. Take away the internet, I don't have a whole lot. There's certain key fundamental foundational things that make a big difference. And those things very often, frighteningly often, come from those times that we step aside from the day-to-day and do a little bit of guided thinking. So that's what the System Club is about. You can test drive the System Club very inexpensively. You can test drive it risk-free. If you don't like what we've got, you just say, hey, I don't like what you got, and you get all your money back. You get your modest initiation feedback. We also have gifts, crazy gifts. The only interview with Gary Bencivenga ever done. One of the top big money copywriters of all time, 40-plus year career. Everybody acknowledges that he's the grand master of copywriting. When he gave his one and only copywriting seminar, Gary Halbert paid $5,000 to come. John Carlton paid $5,000 to come. Perry Marshall, all these people who everybody looks up to, rightfully so, sat at Gary's feet to learn from him. System Club members are the only people on earth that have access to that one interview that Gary did in his career. He did it with us, and he did it with us because he's a System Club member. We also did a day with Drayton Bird, one of the great copywriters of all time over in the UK, and Perry Marshall and me. We did a whole day together brainstorming, each of us trying to outdo the other, for a day, recorded. That's yours for free just for testing the System Club. And then I took the entire system seminar and I condensed it into one super compact day and I delivered it. Recorded, you get that just for testing the System Club. So go to thesystemclub.com/test drive. You can read all about what you get. You can read about what it costs. It's trivial. It's modest. It's nothing. And it could be one of the best things you ever do in your business life.